Hi, everyone. It's Cheryl Millett, and this is an opportunity to talk about all things omegas. And I don't want to take for granted that everybody knows, well, what I've learned, what I've been exposed to in that world for over 10 years. This will be an opportunity tonight just to cover the basics once again. And there'll be other opportunities where I'll come on, and whether it's every 2 weeks or every month, we'll see what happens. But I'm going to now upload these into YouTube, so they will be there, and that will be easy for people to access in the future. Well, let's get started. All things omegas will cover a number of areas, thinking about, well, why do we need omegas? What are omegas? And what's the research and science around omegas? How do they help, and so forth? So there's a number of areas that I kind of identified here that falls in each of those categories. So let's talk first about what is omegas. Now, omegas is a buzzword, and we have to look at the structure of the essential fatty acids. Let's think about essential fatty acids as being only omega-6 and omega-3 that were first discovered by Burr and Burr, actually a husband and wife couple, back in 1929. And they explored what was beneficial for our health. And from what I've read, there was a point in time where fats weren't deemed as necessary and that we didn't need them to live. And they proved it wrong by stripping out the fats, particularly the essential fatty acids, which were essential fatty acids thereafter, and they got sick and they died. So let's just say essential fatty acids, particularly omega-6 and omega-3, are vital for our health, which means we don't produce them. We need them from outside sources, similar to the essential amino acids and also the vitamins and minerals. Essential fatty acids, essential meaning we don't make them. The two essential fatty acids are omega-6 and omega-3. That's what omega-6 and 3 are, and the mega just means that it's at the end. Is the first double bond is 3 carbons up when it's omega-3, and the first double bond for the 6 is at the 6th position. So we have omega-6 and omega-3, and there are various ones within those two categories, omega-6 and omega-3. Omega-3 you might be most familiar with in the acronym DHA or EPA, right? But there's LA, and then there's LAA, ALA, and there's all the lengthy forms, which I won't go into. But some of the things that is necessary to understand is people will ask, well, should I be taking them? Am I not getting enough in my food? Should I be taking a supplement? And then that gets into the question of what are the different types of omegas and what are their differences. There are a few areas to explore when looking at omegas and their differences, but let's put the 3 categories out there. There are others, because essential fatty acids or even fatty acids, be it saturated fat like butter or monounsaturated fat like olive oil, and then the omegas being part of the polyunsaturated fats. So fatty acids are in many of our foods, and some will have more essential fatty acids and be a rich source of that, or even a balanced source of that. And there are other differences which we're going to talk about. So let's talk about the 3 key sources that we're going to compare here and understand them a little bit better, so you can make choices that you want to choose that way. They're the three sources are, we have plant, we have fish, and we have mammal. That's the third one, or mammalian. These are three categories that we're going to focus on. In one area, as far as differences goes, has to do with the actual balance of omega-6 to omega-3. But first, I should probably dive into why do we need omegas, because the balance will actually make sense when we think of inflammation. Inflammation is a component that's present for all diseases. So whether that's cancer, diabetes, colitis, esophagitis, all these itises, meaning inflammation, but all of the conditions, even depression, mental and so forth, wherever we get pain, wherever we have a cut, this is inflammation. But it is a component in all of those diseases, and conditions for the most part. What the omega-6 and omega-3 do is they have their roles, and they're like homologs. So they need each other, but they do different things. And we'll look at it as this way. When we're thinking of omega-6, and the omega-6 actually increases inflammation. This increase of cell division and inflammation is a necessary action, is a necessary thing that we need in our body, because the inflammation that would be, there's a little bug. The inflammation that we need is actually one of those things that, if you get a cut, you would want the immune system to kick in to actually, support the healing, right? Support sending you signals and symptoms so that you know there's something going on. So inflammation necessary. So this is what omega-6 does. So omega-6 would increase inflammation, be there when needed. It's an action being used by the immune system. Let's keep it simple. And then omega-3 comes in and actually would lower inflammation, slow down cell division. And you have this needing both in the body a balance. Now, whether that's 1-to-1 or in some areas of the body, be it the skin, you may have more omega-6. That's our skin is the largest organ and defense there. And so we need that. But at all times, we need to bring down the inflammation. But most of the diseases are chronic inflammation, which means it's still there. It hasn't been lowered. This balance in plant is all over the map, basically. You can look at, if we're striving for a 1-to-1 balance, then let's look at almonds for as example. It's 2,000 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. Corn oil, I've seen different numbers, but let's just use the lower number. Let's say 60 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. Now, plant comes in, we're thinking seeds here. The plant, be it flax, is a little bit more. It's like 3 omega-3 to 1 omega-6, and walnuts is like 4 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. And it'll become apparent in the next difference where plant would fit in that way. But the fish, on average, is actually, on average, 10 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. And that's just the balance that the fish need to be able to speed up in water. Because, the waters are typically colder. It's not like taking a warm bath or a warm shower. The waters are cold, especially when we're thinking of getting rich sources of the essential fatty acids from fish. They are from the cold water. And that would help build it up. They need to speed up. So they would have that omega-6, omega-3 going on. With the mammal, let's say ourselves, there is a range, maybe 1 to 4 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. Some will say let's have a balance of 1-to-1. I think the body's intelligent enough to choose the right balance and have what it needs, more of one or more of the other, and pull what it needs to be able to function properly. So what that number is, I do not know. But mammalian sources are breast milk. Another mammalian source is, let's say, sperm whale blubber, but let's think aquatic mammal, the blubber from aquatic mammals. And the source of that's more accessible but makes more sense, more sustainable, is the seal, and in some cases the harp seal. So that is mammalian. So breast milk, whale blubber, seal blubber, and we do have supplementation in seal blubber or seal oil, which is what I've been using for over 10 years. This is how I've learned all this information, to explore more about what that's all about. And then now I'm just sharing it with people over the years. And this kind of forum gives everybody an opportunity to learn at their own pace or from wherever they are, versus doing the conferences, which is something I won't stop doing. Back to the balance. The plant definitely is more higher, and that I feel is to do with seeds, because seeds, in order to, let's say, pop out of their shell in order to grow, is a huge inflammatory action. So omega-6 would be very beneficial for the seed in that case. If we were to grow plants, then it would start, the balance would shift. It wouldn't be the 200 to 1 omega-6 or 1,000 to 1 omega-6, omega-3. The fish, again, needs the higher amount of omega-6 as well. Every time they need to speed up or move, that's some kind of an inflammatory action response, getting into action. We as mammals are looking more towards the 1-to-1 balance. So that's one aspect that is difference between those three sources. Here's the other thing, and another difference we're going to go into, is that plant is a shorter chain. So if we think of a group of carbons, and there might be certain other fatty acids, there's 6 carbons or 8 carbons or 12 carbons. The polyunsaturated are very flexible. They are typically, they're longer, let's say, and the plant are actually a short essential fatty acid, omega-3, let's say, and that is short. It needs to be lengthened in our body in order to have, some of the functions that it's good for, which I will cover that off a little bit after this part. The fish, they eat the plant and they make it longer. And then you have the seals that come in and eat the fish, and it's like 1 carbon longer. So there's a difference between the DHA in a fish and a DHA in a mammal, let's say. That's one significant difference. And again, we need the conversion to happen. The conversion to happen, it only happens a small portion of the time anyway, to convert from the short chain omega to actually the longer chain omega. And some of the things that interfere with the conversion absolutely will have to do with our digestive function. And most people who have any condition have a dysfunctioning digestive system. So when we think of converting anything, even short chain or like beta carotene and vitamin A to a longer vitamin A, we need to be able to do that in order to have the functions work, that we use it for. The short chain in the plant needs to be converted. Enough needs to be converted. And with chronic stress, digestive function being dysfunctional, we actually have less conversion, which is part of the problem, and actually part of the reason why a lot of people actually were now promoting fish oils as a source, be it they were a longer chain, be it EPA now and DHA. The only thing with fishes is just not long enough. A fish oil is still, yes, it is DHA, but it is still not long enough. And the mammal is, just right. And we can think of one other thing to do with the plant and the fish and the mammal is like a recipe. You're putting a bunch of ingredients together, and for the recipe, you have oil here and vinegar and maybe lemon juice. When it comes to the plant, yeah, that's a different omega-3. When it comes to the fish, it has EPA and DHA, but it's missing the DPA. So DPA, docosahexaenoic acid, is something that is in the mammals, be it in breast milk, be it in ourselves, be it in the harp seal. So that's the second difference, is really just understanding the makeup of the essential fatty acids within them and the length of chain. The other difference between the fish and the mammal is they are triglyceride molecules, unlike the plant. But these triglyceride molecules differ between fish and plant. And this is all research and this is all science. If we think of the fish, their essential fatty acid is actually located in the center position, or what they call the SN2, whereas the mammals is located on the SN1 and the SN3. The significance for that, be it for a newborn baby with the mother's breast milk, is actually that the SN3 position will actually break off in the mouth by the lipase enzymes and be absorbed through the salivary glands. Some of the salivary glands are called sublingual glands, and they'll actually absorb directly into the bloodstream, directly into the brain and the rest of the body. And that's a mammalian triglyceride molecule. The sublingual becomes very beneficial based on where your digestive system is functioning. And that's an important piece as well. Alongside these fats, or let's say oil, as in the seal oil, you actually can have vitamin D and vitamin A that will go along for the ride and actually absorb directly into the system, bypassing the unpredictable digestive system. So that's very valuable as well, is how our body can absorb it. Because it's mammalian, it's like and like, it just works that way. It just works that way. So we've talked about the balance of the omega-6 and omega-3, more one-to-one, fish being out of, it's 10 omega-6 to 1 omega-3, so too much omega-6 naturally. And then we have the plant, which are all over the map, be it as great as 2,000 omega-6 to 1 omega-3. And this works with the managing the inflammation within the body. So those are the three things I wanted to bring to light on the differences of those three sources: the plant, the fish, and the mammal. There are others as well, but they come in different sources, like phospholipid for krill. We can say, well, that's for the sperm whale, right? The sperm whale can convert that. It can make use of that and then create the mammalian molecule that would be absorbable for us. Primarily, if we were in great health and we didn't consume so much processed food and we didn't have the stress, we would convert women more than men, because women need to convert it to be able to express it for the young, for the baby. So we have the balance. We then have the different forms of omegas, be it DPA is in the mammal, whereas DHA and EPA are the only one that's in the fish, and then plant is different. And then the sublingual absorption, because of the molecular structure, is actually a different, makes a difference for absorbing it and effectively. Now, why omegas? Why do we need them? Why are doctors and practitioners, and you read a lot about them, and they are one of the top supplements in the world as far as sales goes. And there's a good reason for it. Yes, they are essential, but there's a couple of things to think about here. There's always an economic thing, especially with fish oil, when it's not that effective. And you can look up all the research on that. In some cases, it causes inflammation, and I've seen that personally. Part of it might be to do with the oxidation. So why do we need it? Yes, to manage our inflammatory, like our inflammation, yes, but very key in the brain health. So if you think of the brain, the nervous system, which is all through our body, which is very critical for communication. Your muscles won't work, your brain, thinking, mind, all the communication it needs for things to function within the body, to move in the body, and to produce. I mean, it's very connected to the hormonal system, which we know we have, the glands, within the brain are in the brain for a reason, but there's this, everything is kind of tied in and works together. But the brain uses 40% of the nutrients that we bring into our body, and that would include the oxygen, the water, and then the vital nutrients as well. So it does use up a lot of nutrients, and one of its critical components is the omega-3. So every nerve cell is dependent upon omega-3. This is the myelin sheath. We think of MS having the issues. We don't get the signal from one end to the other and then kind of moving on. Well, things don't work. We have issues that way. So very important, again, for the inflammation, very important for every nerve cell in our body. And then we can bring it down to the cell, the individual cell. The individual cell has a cell membrane monitoring what goes in and out, what it wants to keep out, what has to remain in. And this cell membrane is communicating with other cells, it's communicating with its environment. Yes, it's letting in things in and out, but it's also part of the healing. It's part of the healing. The potential and communication in the cell membrane is dependent upon the bilayer, a lipid bilayer that brings, especially on the poly and essential fatty acids, the fluidity to the cell membrane versus having just saturated fats or monounsaturated fats. It brings that. So here we have a membrane that's critical in being able to, every organ, right, every system is dependent upon these groups of cells and how they operate. And the healing potential is there. I mean, we can get into more vibrational here. We can get into pH levels, voltage, as Dr. Jerry Tennant will talk about. And I think you've heard maybe from Dr. Bruce Lipton talking about we're only healthy as our cell wall. Tennant says the cell membrane is the brain of the cell. But here and there, it is a component, a very, very key component, the main component of every cell in our body. What that is important for by having healthy cell membranes, not trans fats, those kind of things will just, make the cell membrane not function properly, is oxygen magnets, right? So these essential fatty acids, particularly omega-3, has a huge affinity for oxygen. In the fish, that's what would make it smell. That would make it rancid, which is why we have to eat up fish very quickly, because it would oxidize, and then that's not good for our system. And that's what they do say about the fish oil supplements, is oxidation happens quite quickly, and then you have this fish oil that's 50% or more oxidized in the capsule. And then they have to refine it, bleach it, and deodorize. And that's another element I'm going to speak about. But let's just look at those few things as in the reasons why we need to take omegas. Yes, they're essential. Our body doesn't make them. But these key systems, the nervous system and every cell in our body, and then we think of cardiovascular health. You think of all of these things as well. So they're necessary and they're essential. And some of researchers will say that the key reason they feel that there's mental disabilities and learning disabilities out there and so much chronic inflammation is actually based on us having this unhealthy fats, not having enough of the essential fatty acids, and particularly that imbalance, having way too much omega-6 over omega-3. I think the last stat I read is that a lot of testing is showing that instead of having 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3, most people are in the 10-to-1 or even 20-to-1 category, and that would just be staying in an inflammatory state. So really, the whole thing around omegas is, yes, managing inflammation and having a healthy nervous system, which ties into the immune system with the balance of omega-6 and omega-3 and so forth. Now let's get to the processing, because that's okay. I'm just going to check the time here. That's a critical point. Being in food processing for 20 years, it is necessary for people to understand just how processed foods are. Now, there's different levels of processing, and there's processing. Well, when you make a smoothie, you're actually processing the food. It's not the apple anymore, it's the juice of the apple. It's not even a whole food anymore. Or when you make your smoothie, you're just blending things up, making it more accessible, maybe raising the blood sugars levels too as well. So we have, that is a process, that is processing. Then you have heat, comes into the processing as well. And then you have chemicals for separation, chemicals to to take away the oxidation perhaps. And then we just continue to have what I will call, dead food, really. It's not vibrant, it's not live. And I know with working with the Om seal oil, one of the things that was necessary for me to even try it was the very fact that it was raw. It wasn't refined, bleached, and deodorized, which is actually the standard oil refining. Now most of the seeds that we know are actually refined, and you would have to, of course, you'd have to get the oil out of the seed. And that refining, bleaching, deodorizes makes things more shelf stable. So you can know that to be true just by the mere fact of the canola oil, soybean oil. People have it for months and keeping it, it's on the shelf, it's not in the refrigerator. But then if you have something like a flax oil, the flax oil is highly susceptible to oxidation. It's in a dark bottle, it's in a sealed, they use it up quickly. It's not probably the ideal thing you want to consume. Then they moved to ground flax, right? Ground flax was more stable and less to oxidize. So omega-3 has a huge affinity for oxygen, and but it does depend on the stability. So with the seal oil, it's very stable just based on the structure that it has. So it's not really kind of black and white when it comes to that. But when you refine and bleach and deodorize, you change it. You change the effect you're going to get from it. And that's what I've seen, where people have been on the various sources, refined seal oil even, and they'll come back and say, well, it didn't work. And it is a very big factor with our food, to eat fresh food, to eat whole food, to eat live food, to eat certified or like naturally grown food. Even wild food has a very important strength to it beyond the commercial farming. But when we think about oil, think about most of the oil out there is refined, bleached, and deodorized, which is RBD. Bleached is bleached, just as it sounds. They don't, if they use the high heat that they use, they want to take away, they want to make it clear for you, if that makes any sense. And the deodorizing is, you don't want it to smell because, there's some oxidation happening there. So they have to change that. With any fish oil, you're going to see on the label, it'll have refined, purified, mostly distilled. For the most part, they're all the same thing, and they would denature or change the structure of the molecule. So for the most part, I'm just going to end up here on the huge differences. Hi, Sherry. The huge differences with, when we think of the actual research and study, what would happen with a plant and fish versus like a raw seal oil is the nerves can grow back. So we need to understand nerves can grow back. And that was quite a breakthrough with the University of Toronto. And then there was the conference around neuropathy, which happens with diabetics and cancer treatment. But I think it happens with other things as well. They call it idiopathic neuropathy, where it's basically damaged nerves. You have damaged nerves, you have circulatory issues as well. You can have damaged nerves anywhere, even in the esophagus, which would impair the peristaltic movement of the food coming from the mouth to the stomach. So damaged nerves are not a good thing, not a good thing. So in the study over 1 year, which is type 1 diabetics, in the eye, the nerves grew back 29%. Other things that have happened, MS, we talked about that. That has to do with the nerves. And these nerves are recovering to the point where, the one hand is not normal, becomes like the normal hand. And that would help for writing, or the legs, just stability that way. I think one of the key things is, well, how much oil does one need to take to balance and to look at the whole diet. I'm not against consuming plants. I think people have to realize if there's a need to consume a mammalian, they're not converting enough, then great. But you can certainly take the two of them. There's different essential fatty acids for both of them. I think that's really what I'm going to cover off today. I don't know if anybody has any questions, and they can always be posted below and I can bring them into the next video. The idea is to talk about all things omega in a light where it's completely, educational, and to share things that some doctors, some researchers know about, but it isn't their job to actually communicate this to the people, if that makes any sense. And doctors are so busy when they're looking up research, or they receive certain things and what they have to do, that most likely, if it isn't a pharmaceutical rep or some rep that's coming in and telling them about it and educating them on it, they're just going to continue recommending fish oil for the reasons they would some earlier research, and do that. So that's part of the reason why I'm going to come, and every couple of weeks I'll just come on and talk a little bit about omegas and anything else that kind of comes up. So for the most part, when we think of all the functioning that the brain has, that's a whole dive, diving deep, because we think about where the thinking, the mind, it's just not a physical thing as well. All your senses from a physical standpoint are, connected and dependent upon the nervous system. So I've had people ask me, well, is it possible, Cheryl, that my spiritual journey or my spiritual growth could be tied to the oil? It seems like after I've been taking this for several months, that it has improved various different areas. I won't talk to those, but it is different for different people. But other things have happened with diabetics. They have, the neuropathy lessens, it kind of, or goes away. And I think about those people who are having neuropathy, and it's pins and needles and heat and burning. And in fact, it actually wakes them up at night. Or we can actually talk to the diabetic that will lose their limbs, lower limb amputation, they call it, due to neuropathy and nerve damage. So there's a number of conditions that tied to damaged nerves. And at the end of it, at the root cause, it is damaged nerves. And why are those nerves damaged? They try to work with the condition as to what the symptoms are, but it's not getting to the root cause. So I feel that taking enough of the essential fatty acids, and yes, try to remove as many of the refined vegetable oils as possible. It's difficult from the standpoint that it's the lubricant of the food industry. You find it in enough number of products, but there are been shifts, shifts to olive oil, shifts to no oils in certain products. And then you have people appreciating coconut oil and olive oil much better. So healthy fats are going to be vital for our health. If there's anything to do with the researchers, the Japanese researchers, saying that it is this imbalance of essential fatty acids that's the root cause of all this chronic inflammation, because it's needed by the immune system to manage the inflammation, which is a component in all disease, then, well, let's look at that. let's look at that. But I feel, just from my experience of working 10 years, that this fish oil is not as effective. I know Harvard says it as well. Is not as effective as we were led to believe. Even veterinarians are saying they've been sold the bill of goods on having dogs fish oil, consume fish oil and putting it in their products. I mean, we logically think, well, they don't fish, dogs don't fish, so some logic there. But nonetheless, they're mammals as well. So they're getting great results on the seal oil as well. I've seen many animals to do with their allergies, their skin issues, joint issues, fur, those kind of things, completely dramatically change within, in certain conditions that were never going away with even increasing fish oil. And then the raw seal oil comes in and boom, it disappears, it goes away. And I'd like to say I know what the dose is for everyone and to say, oh yeah, everybody just take this much. But I feel that some people have to take therapeutic doses. And we had one child who was on the autistic spectrum, age 12, and he went from a grade 2 math to a grade 7 math. Now that was 2 tablespoons, 6 teaspoons. In mLs, how much is that? Well, for every teaspoon, it's 5. And you've times it 6, that's 30 mLs. It's 30 mLs a day. And that was quite a bit. So hats off to the parent to trying that therapeutic dose. Obviously, it would be more money to do those things, so I get it. But we just start somewhere, and we see over time what amounts do what for the body, right? With alongside eliminating, some vegetable oil, if that's how it works. Should work better that way. But anyway, yeah, so I just kind of going to end it off here. Again, happy to answer questions, whether you're just watching this video for the first time and you want to post the question below. I will look at them and bring them into the talks, because absolutely there is questions about stability, about toxicity, about whatever processing, how it's, how we come to getting seal oil in a supplement. And I'll go through that. I'm going to do that next week. That's what we're doing. I'm going to do another video that's going to just talk about those things around the edges that I've, what we call them, frequently asked questions. And I will do that because they're surely great questions, and they do warrant more time than just, a couple of minutes here. So we'll sign off for today. Thank you for coming on, Sherry. And for others, this might be your first time you're ever hearing about seal oil. There's a lot of people that haven't heard about it. It's not available in the U.S. I mean, there's Canada here, and we work with it, and other countries surely work with it too, like Russia and so forth. But so omega is very valuable. I just want to again say thank you. And I just want to, again, encourage people to ask questions and put any responses, any comments too as well as welcome. So have a good evening. It's Cheryl Millett, all things omega, and mostly going to be Wednesday at 8 p.m. If there's a need for it, I'll do it more often. But otherwise, I think I do want to come on and just talk to the research and the results as well over these past 10 years. And as more research is published, I can bring that up as well. So take care, everyone. Have a good evening, and hope to see you again. Bye for now.